bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good bye-week Tuesday. Eagles fans, appreciate you jumping in with us here on Birds 365 as we get closer. We're still not close, but closer to the Eagles act going back to playing football against the Chiefs in Kansas City on Monday night. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac hanging with you. We'll punch up two Eagle guests for you over the next 2 hours. Johnny Mac, still no Eagle action. I'm going to ask you about the churn at the back end of the roster here, but no practice yet, no meetings yet, no chance to interact with any of the Eagle players. What do you do on your off day Monday?
I don't have off days. I'm not collectively bargained into off days, Jody. We got to do this show.
You didn't have to get in the car and go over to South Philly. So
no, did not have to go in the car to go to South Philly. I got to get in the car to do a bunch of other stuff, but not South Philly. So that, that's always nice when you don't have to go over the bridge and, hit the easy pass, constantly hitting, bang. You go, where'd that come from? Where'd that $75 go? Where'd that $75? But I digress.
They add up quickly, those easy pass charges, especially when you still got your daughter on your pass. She's a down the shore girl, so we keep funding that account. You know what I did yesterday? I got exercise, good cardio, leaf raking. I could show you the blister on my hand, my soft hand. My girly soft hands are not used to doing manual labor. So spent too much time outside raking leaves yesterday, but we're trying to stay in game day shape. The question is, will the Eagles, when they get back to practice this week, again, John and I both harp on this, the Eagles get days off like everybody else. The whole mentality of, they should lock themselves in a facility for the 2 weeks so they could be better for it. You got to be a little bit realistic here. The downtime can help. Some guys just need to get out and clear their heads and get away from football, and then hopefully they come back and they are fully fledged and in it and dive in with both feet. If I had to ask you one guy on the Philadelphia Eagles who you think needed the mental break to get away for 7, 8, 9 days, whatever it is, and not worry about football, but then be able to jump back in with both feet. Who do you think the guy would be? Who would benefit the best?
That's a tough question.
Being away.
Who's, I would say it's got to be a struggling player. I would say, but he's not healthy. I would say Quez or maybe Derek Barnett. Derek needs to get out of Philadelphia. Let's be honest. I mean, it's not working for him. But I would say somebody like that needs the pause button. But this team's pretty mentally strong, and they've been pretty good for 2 seasons. So, I mean, who's having it? James Bradbury, we talked about a little bit, but he's such a mentally tough player. Like, I don't think it bothers him. Process driven, as they say. which has become a cliche in the NFL. I took some of my time to look at other coaches' post-game press conferences when they put them up there. They're all the same, Jody. So it's unbelievable. If I hear process-driven again, I might lose it. It's like a bunch of robot automatrons. And I get it, but anyway, I digress. But so who else is struggling?
Any guys from the slot. You could throw
but they're young. I think they're young players. I think they don't even know yet. And by the way, with Sidney Brown and Eli Ricks, I mean, they never even played the position before. I mean, I think it's kind of built into the expectations are going to be a little bit limited, at least with the coaching staff, maybe not with the fan base. So I don't think anybody's looking at those two guys and saying, ooh, they're just, I think it's the other way. I think the organization says, thanks for persevering. Thanks for doing something that you're not used to. Thanks for being out of your comfort zone. Be willing to do it. Because we've seen in the past a guy like Andre Dillard is like, oh, I can't move from the left side to the right side, and kind of gave up. The fact that they're in there fighting, I think, is enough for certainly the organization. And they'll get a nice hat tip as Bradley Roby comes back into the lineup. So, I mean, I would say Barnett, because he's turned from nice guy to angry guy because of everything he's gone through, been through, partially his fault, partially others' fault, but nonetheless, it is what it is. I would say him.
Yeah, and if he gets another DNP coach's decision, you kind of gave him a backdoor out last week that they had to have Ben Van Sumeren on the roster because the Cowboys were such a threat as a special teams return team.
I didn't give him an out. I said I just want to wait a week because I do know they were worried about the Cowboys special teams. I'm not saying that's why they did it. I just want to see if that's why they did it, because Van Sumeren came out of nowhere. It's like, what? Why is this guy getting elevated? And he's a tremendous athlete, and he can just run, and he's a freak. He's an athletic freak. And I know from talking to Michael Clay they were really worried about the Cowboys special teams. John Fossil's the best special teams coordinator in the NFL. If he's not, it's probably Dave Phipp, who used to be here. And their kick returner, Turpin, is tremendous. And even though it's not a play that gets used all that much, you want to use the touchback as much as humanly possible. If you get a miss hit or something, he's a guy who can make you pay. And there aren't a lot of those guys in the NFL any longer because nobody cares about the position because they barely use the position. They'd rather take the ball to 25 and all that kind of stuff. So that's my personal belief. I want to wait a week and see if he's another coach's decision inactive, because the second part, the back end, is all right. Well, maybe they want to get Nolan Smith more involved, but they didn't get Nolan Smith more involved. So that's kind of why I personally want to wait and see if that was just Dallas centric, or if they come back off the bye and he's another TNP coach's decision. Yeah, they've kind of given up on him.
Yeah, that's what I am predicting is going to happen for two reasons. Number one, Dallas doesn't, Kansas City doesn't have a return guy that you got to run and hide from. They don't have a Turpin like the Cowboys do. Their return game has been relatively non-existent. Both kickoffs and punts have been absolutely nothing. So even if you were to attempt to make that argument, and the Eagles didn't, Johnny Mack did here with me, but if they did, I'd go, really? You're afraid of McCole Hardman, who just got back there? Really? That's the reason that you're elevating Ben Van Sumeren? So we assume Van Sumeren doesn't get activated.
Well, he might now because Nakobe Dean is hurt. But remember, last week, Nakobe, not before the bye, Nakobe wasn't hurt. He got hurt in the game, so he was a full go.
Right,
you
but
didn't need depth.
Was Ellis active last week?
Oh yeah, he's a key special teams guy.
Okay,
so you didn't need depth going into at linebacker going into the Cowboys game. You do need it a little bit, and they worked out Anthony Barr on Monday. The Eagles did. So obviously they're looking for more depth.
How'd that work?
It didn't work. He's going back to Minnesota. They lost Jordan Hicks on Sunday.
Wonder if he agreed to go back to the Vikings while driving to the airport, because sooner had somebody reported that they was working out for the Eagles within, I think, less than an hour.
Yeah.
Oh, Anthony Barr going back to the Vikings for a second run.
That might be, they knew they had to act quickly. And they did. I don't think he's got much left either way. So, I mean, he was a really good player in his prime.
During his day, yeah.
Yeah. I think he made 4 Pro Bowls, but his last one, I think, was 2018. And that stretch, he was one of the best all-around linebackers in football, but that's a long time ago. That's so I don't think he was going to be much help here, to be honest. I don't think he's going to be much help there. But they worked him out, so that tells you that they're looking for some kind of depth at the linebacker position.
All right, so let's play the roster game here. Let's just suggest Van Sumeren stays because he's getting Nakobe Dean's spot because Nakobe's out. Have they officially put him on IR yet?
No, not yet. Not yet.
But they probably are going to go there. They need to activate Juergens.
Yes.
To the 46. So somebody's got to go who was active last week. Who would you suggest that might be?
Well, but my thought is that Nakobe's going to IR. When they make the move, that's Cam's spot. He'll be back on the 53. He'll take that spot. Now, the question becomes because Ben Van Sumeren's not going to be on the 53. He might get elevated again for a week. But I don't even think he's ready to play linebacker. So I don't even know if that's the case. But
they don't have anybody else.
No, they don't. Well, Brandon Smith is on the practice squad, ex-Penn State linebacker, but that's why they brought in Barr. They want somebody who knows how to play, it seems. And we'll see if they can get that done in the coming days to bring him. But that signing would probably be a practice squad signing, at least to start. Very similar to Julio Jones. Barr's going back to Minnesota on the practice squad to start. It would depend on. That was a weird injury. Hicks, I don't know if you read about it. Compartment syndrome. He hurt his shin, and he went back in the game, and all of a sudden it was swelling to the point it became an issue, and they had to take him to the hospital. And so a little bit of a weird injury, and they don't know the full timetable, but if he's out for a long time, obviously Barr will probably get elevated, but he'll start on the practice squad there. Are they going to start the window on Justin Evans? They can. I would imagine they would. But I haven't seen him, so I don't know if he's ready. And then Quez. Are they going to start that window? They seem to like Quez. I mean, by all indications, do they want him back? So if those guys start getting in the mix, then you have to start talking about other potential options. Dallas Goedert could go to IR. They looked at a bunch. They brought Noah Tungiai back to work out. They're looking for tight ends without Dallas Goedert. Is Goedert going to go on IR? They might have to put him on IR depending on how long he's going to be out with the fractured forearm.
Before we even decide is Goedert going IR, because there's two different, and they can be distinctly different numbers we're talking about here, the 53 and the 46. Who's going to be the other tight end? Are they going to go with just 2 tight ends? Goedert, we know, is out. How he's going to be replaced is to be determined.
Well, no, they have 3: Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, and Albert.
And Alberto, excuse me.
Yeah, Alberto.
Which means
I was going to try.
Have they had any week this year where they had all 4 guys active?
No.
Alberto's been a scratch basically every week.
And Alberto got his first playing time against Dallas. So, and that was because Calcaterra was in the protocol. But, so the Tungiai thing is who's been here and gone and back and gone. And, this will be at least his 3rd time if he comes back. Is that about replacing EJ Jenkins on the practice squad, or is that about, Calcaterra has that concussion history dating back to college where he retired from the sport for a short period. So, maybe concussions are more concerning with him. A lot of people have brought that up. But I got to tell you, he was back on the practice field immediately, working through the protocol. So, I mean,
was Tungiai on somebody else's practice squad and just got released, or has he been out there for a while? Because they signed Jenkins. When they signed Jenkins to the practice squad, were both of those 2 guys available? Have they changed their mind? They not like what they've seen out of Jenkins?
Yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as that. You always have that churn. His last team was the Raiders, Tungiai, and he was October 2nd. He signed to their practice squad. He was released on October 24th. So yeah, he was out there. There's constant churn on the practice squad, and Ross Piersbacher's back because Jeff Stoutland always likes a backup center on the practice squad. I don't know why, because Kelsey plays every damn game, but he always every year, if you look at the Eagles practice squad, there's a center on it every single year. Might be just for scout team work. This year it was Julian Good-Jones, and Julian got plucked off by Washington. So they brought Ross back. Yeah, there's always a lot of churn. And Kendall Bildor, a lot of people were excited about him because he's a slot guy. You can get unexcited by Kendall Bildor. He's out the door. Yeah. But he might be back next week. Don't be surprised.
Not if Mr. Evans is ready to go. I would say that would put a kibosh.
Well, on the practice squad, I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right. But the regular roster feeds down to the practice squad. We always say things trickle up in the National Football League. Well, the regular roster trickles down to the practice squad and dictates some of the moves that the teams make. He's McMullen on McDonald. That makes this Mac and Mac here on Birds 365. Like I said, we got 2 good guests coming your way. First is someone that I talked to Kayla the previous time that she was here on the show with us.
I believe so. Yeah.
Who did I miss?
You missed Breland.
Who was that?
Breland Moore.
Breland, yes. You got to get her. She does that night show now.
I know. She does that night show now.
The news guy. And he's pretty good. I've caught it a couple times. I don't watch it regularly, but I've caught it a couple of times. But I look at him as the news guy. When he's trying to hold a sports conversation, he's not terrible, but it just seems wrong. And Breland's got to carry that show. We got to get her around.
It's tough when you got to stay up late and get up early. It's a tough sell. But I'll try to get Breland.
He's got it. Well, you're talking to me here, buddy. I was on the air till 3:00 in the morning. So
not everybody's Jody McDonald.
Get up early after you've been up late is something you got to power through. Kayla Santiago, part of the JAKIB Eagles pregame show, is going to join us coming up hopefully in the next couple of minutes. And a little later in the show, Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated. He's a Johnny running mate, jumped over from Fansided to Sports Illustrated this year, national football writer, and a guy who used to cover the Chiefs, covers the whole league now, but used to cover the Chiefs. Thought it'd be a good week to get Matty V on, so he's going to join us a little bit later. But hopefully, Kayla Santiago from the Eagles postgame show here on JAKIB, up next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed the most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
That is what we talk here on Birds 365, all EAGLES Eagles. McMullen and McDonald here with you. And we've got Kayla Santiago from the JAKIB Media Eagles post-game show and now doing work these days for PHLY on the college basketball side. But we're going to talk Eagles with her today. Kayla, did we get you up? You're coming out of the bedroom today. Did you just wake up like, damn, you look good for having woke up 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm in my hometown in New Jersey, so my background's a little bit different here today because I got to go right to Philly after this. But I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, I appreciate you going. You got a jet down to cover Penn basketball, I think. Is that what you're doing today?
Yeah, I do. They just got a huge win over Villanova last night, so that should be a lot of fun to cover.
Yeah,
very surprising in men's basketball. It was big.
It was. That's a big win for Penn. I would say that. But I also, Kayla's got more jobs than me now, so I always respect that. I'm flipping channels the other day. I think that's Kayla doing Delaware Bluecoats play-by-play.
Yeah, I'm their fill-in play-by-play and their sideline reporter for this season. The game's on CBS, so that's been a whole lot of fun too.
Yeah, and Jameer Nelson, the GM now of the Delaware Bluecoats. By the way, I love the Delaware 87ers. It was too esoteric for people. I love that nickname.
I liked it too.
Yeah, but evidently it was too. People couldn't figure it out. But I digress. All right, let's talk Eagles, Kayla. Bye week, everybody's doing their own personal self-scouts. You get to see the games, talk about them on our post-game show. What's your biggest concern? 8-1 team at the break, but not a lot of style points everybody keeps talking about. What's your biggest concern personally?
It's honestly health and not having Dallas Goedert. I think a lot of people, say, well, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, we'll be absolutely fine. That I do agree with if you're talking about the receiving game and tight ends in the receiving game. But Dallas Goedert does so much more in the blocking game for Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles than I think a lot of people realize. So I definitely think That's going to be tough when you're going into these tough games against the Chiefs, against the Bills, against the 49ers, things like that. For me, it's just Jalen Hurts, and is he going to be healthy? Was this enough time for him to really be able to work on that knee and get 100% healthy? We still don't know what's going on. The Eagles are not really talking about it, which is understandable. But at the same time, how bad is it, and what will it take for maybe if he just steps on it the wrong way? Will it be that bad, or if he just has a brace, will we be completely fine? I think that's my biggest worry. I know a lot of people don't like the secondary right now, and I completely understand it. But I think we've seen Sean Desai make quite the adjustments so far this year. The last 2 weeks, it's been a little bit rough for Sean Desai, I think, but they'll be good. They're in their bye week. I think they're going to be okay. Once again, they're a really young secondary out of Darius Slay and James Bradbury instead of those two. So I'm not too worried about it. I think that right now it's really just the health of these guys. And if they're really going to be okay coming out of this bye week, I think it came at the perfect time.
Kayla, even with the aching knee, it hasn't stopped Jalen Hurts from being able to throw the ball all over the lot. He's been phenomenal throwing the ball, most of it from the pocket the last couple weeks, but he just hasn't been the same runner as he was last year. And that was a key ingredient to the Eagle offense, the N1 aspect of it, of him being able to take off and make a play with his legs. I'm hoping that his knee is 100% solid when we come back here from the bye, but do you think that if it is, we'll see the return of Jalen, the running quarterback, or is that still going to be something? Because before he hurt the knee, he wasn't exactly running up a ton of yards either. I think that's by design from both he and the organization and everyone involved. They were just not going to have him as a running option the way they did last year. Or am I wrong? Do you think that returns if Jalen is 100% healthy?
I don't think it returns. They just haven't been utilizing it this year. I don't know if that's a Brian Johnson thing or an Nick Sirianni thing. I can kind of tell that Jalen wants to run a little bit, but I feel like in the back of his mind, they're telling him, don't put, because you can see a lot of the times he's very, very hesitant. When he does those little stutter slides, it scares me the most because I feel like he's honestly going to get a little bit more injured than if he were just to run through the straight shot as well to the sideline. I don't think we're going to see it come back. And if it doesn't, they really need to get this run game going. It's something that we have not seen consistently really since week 2 when DeAndre Swift was able to go off. If you're not going to run Jalen Hurts the way that he can run, you need to make sure that you're utilizing that running game, because at the end of the day, if you're not and you don't have plans in place to do that, Jalen's going to make plays and Jalen's going to go by his instinct and try to run the ball, even if it's not something they want him to do.
Defensively, we haven't talked about. I'm a little surprised that you didn't go there, because that's been the bigger issue, the offense, even though at times it's been a little bit different. They've been successful when it comes to piling up yardage and points. Defensively, though, the slot has been a revolving door. Nakobe Dean's out again. That back seven, that if I'm an Eagles fan, that's number one on my worry list.
I think that it's stressful to worry about that secondary because we're going to get what we're going to get from them because they're so young. I think that they're going to get better as the season goes on. But what you look at the opponents that you have right now, okay, you got a Chiefs team that's probably going to run all over that secondary. The main thing for me is not even the young guys back there. It's the Darius Slay and James Bradbury that, to me, really just haven't been playing up to their potential. Is it because they have to move around constantly because there's a lot of younger guys? Probably. But I think right now those guys need to step up if they want any chance in the secondary. I honestly think that Nakobe Dean being out is not a terrible thing. He hasn't really been playing that well of football anyway for the Philadelphia Eagles. I personally think Nick Morrow is better suited for that spot right now, along with Zach Cunningham. What the pressure needs to come from is that front four right there for the defense. We've seen right now what Jalen Carter can do. We've seen what Jordan Davis can do at the moment in that box. I think against the Chiefs, especially when you look at that game, they need to consistently put the pressure on, knowing that the secondary behind them isn't the best. And then if you're Sean Desai, you just got to figure it out with the young guys that you have. I mean, right now, it's not going to get better. They didn't really trade for anybody to get into that secondary that could really make a difference. It's definitely a worry, but I've seen Sean Desai adjust, and I think that's where I'm going to be able to trust in the Eagles' defense more than the offensive side of the ball, where I feel like Brian Johnson has a little bit of work to do.
Kayla, the Kansas City Chiefs are next up on the schedule, and I think people probably remember the last time the Eagles and the Chiefs played. It was a pretty important game. Didn't quite go the Eagles' way, but damn close. Is this Super Bowl revenge? Is this just Week 11 opponent? Is this a key game in the 2023 season? How does Nick Sirianni look at this, and how does he portray it to his players to get them in the optimum position to be able to compete on Monday night?
From the outside looking in, I would just say it's another game this season. You're looking at a team that was pretty banged up going into the bye week. And yes, you had a week of rest, but I can tell you those guys probably still aren't 100% healthy, and one of them probably being Jalen Hurts. That being said, we all know who Nick Sirianni is. He's a guy that really wears his emotions on his sleeve. And I think Philadelphia absolutely loves that about him. I think he's the perfect coach for this city. That being said, though, I think he's going to go into this game with a lot of high emotions and a lot of high nerves just because of what was on the line last year. And both teams aren't that too much different. But I think Nick Sirianni really needs to just discipline this team, understanding that it's just another game this season. And I don't necessarily think it's a must win. I get it. People are going to talk and say, well, the Eagles aren't a legit team because they showed out of the bye week that they can't beat Kansas City. It'd be their second loss of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia does drop this game. I think the emotions are going to be riding high for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think discipline from Nick Sirianni relaying to these guys is going to be the most important thing, especially when you're losing big pieces like Dallas Goedert.
When the goal is the number one seed, Kayla, it's difficult to lose a game because the bye week wasn't that productive for the Eagles. Right. From an opposition standpoint in the NFC, the Detroit Lions won. The San Francisco 49ers got Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel back, and all of a sudden they look like world beaters again. They destroyed Jacksonville. That's a very good team. And the Dallas Cowboys obviously had a bye week, but their bye week was on the field and named Tommy DeVito. So everybody won. That is a threat, and I put that in quotations to the Philadelphia Eagles. Of those three teams, or I don't think you're going to go Seattle or Minnesota and Josh Dobbs. So of those three teams, who's the biggest threat for the Philadelphia Eagles on the NFC side?
It's definitely the 49ers, in my opinion, just because I feel like they can give so much pressure to the quarterback. I mean, you look at the pickup of Chase Young on one side and Nick Bosa on the other. That scares me if you're any team in the league, even if it's an AFC team. So talking about the NFC, honestly, I'm not worried about the Detroit Lions. The 49ers are really the only squad that I'm worried about. And you look at that game and you say, okay, you may or may not have Dallas Goedert, which may hurt you. The offensive line for Philadelphia looked horrendous last week. If they play another game like that, they are not going to survive San Francisco. With that being said, though, I think the Eagles' offense is a little bit better. And if it turns into a shootout, I think Philadelphia wins. But that contest, it's going to be a lot of protection. That offensive line is really going to have to turn it up a gear because their defense is very, very scary. And on the offensive side of things, they're looking to put it together. So I think when you talk about most evenly matched, it's definitely the 49ers in the NFC.
I think the 49ers are the second best team in the NFC. But if you're looking at who's got the biggest and best chance to beat the Eagles out for the number one seed, yeah, I do think it's Detroit because of the schedule they're playing. But those are, you answered the question, I think, the way John wanted you to answer it. I interpreted just slightly differently. All right. Are the Eagles interpreting just plugging a new slot corner back in off injured reserve, Bradley Roby, to be the answer to all their...
He never went to IR, Jody. They left him on the roster. Bradley doesn't have to be activated.
Okay, he doesn't have to be activated. Thanks for the correction. Bringing him back off the inactive list. I know that he's a veteran and he's been there before. They've been trying out guys who never played in the slot before. He's played 50 snaps. That's not a whole hell of a lot of snaps in an Eagle uniform to go, oh, we got Bradley Roby back. We're fine. Are the Eagles fine when they get Bradley Roby back at the corner, at the slot corner?
I don't think they're fine. I think they are better. I think you also get a chance to have a little bit more of a rotational secondary, which we really didn't see before the bye week. Not really sure why they didn't play him, if they were just trying to test a lot of different things out, but that's something they definitely shouldn't have gone to. And hopefully Roby is back against the Chiefs because they're definitely going to need him in there. I think he had a good game when he first came on the Eagles, and I think he can throughout the rest of the season. Once again, though, I think it's up to those guys captaining it back there, and Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Those are the two guys I look at and say they have not had stellar seasons so far, especially Darius Slay. And I get they're moving around a lot. There's a lot of new guys coming in and out. There's never a consistent secondary. I mean, you look at the games throughout the season, maybe one or two where it's the same starting secondary throughout the year so far. I understand, but I have not been impressed with the play of Darius Slay and James Bradbury. Those are the guys I want to focus on too, because they need to captain that defense back there, having the younger guys. Is Roby a fix? Absolutely not. Will it help them? Yes. And I think that Sean Desai can work with that.
All right. I know you got a bolt at Kayla_Santiago1 on X. You can follow Kayla there. She is one of the hosts, all-star cast on the JAKIB Sports post-game show, Eagles. You can watch that on JAKIB Sports YouTube channel or simulcast at 6abc.com. Doing fill-in play-by-play work for the Delaware Blue Coats, doing college basketball for PHLY, Philly Sports, so you can check her out there as well. Thanks for taking a little bit of time. I know you got a jet across that bridge to West Philly, so be careful. Don't speed.
I won't. Thank you guys so much for having me, and hopefully we have no worries as they go take on the Chiefs.
Kayla, thank you very much. That's Kayla Santiago here with us on Birds 365. Yeah, John, I'm going to keep harping on this because until Bradley Roby goes
Kayla's down on Bradbury and Slay. By the way, I picked Slay. Here, I got to throw this out. I picked Slay as my midseason defensive MVP for the Eagles. Now, he's not the best player, but I thought he was the MVP of the defense because of all that moving around that Kayla talked about and everything, and having to do things and taking CD Lamb at the end of the game. Now, the best players are obviously up front. Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter. But I thought he was the MVP of the defense just because all the different things he had to do to make up for all that, should I use the word crap on the back end? I knew it would be controversial, but yeah, there's a lot of people down on Slay. By the way, he didn't help himself. He tweeted also over the weekend how much fun it was to watch the 49ers defense. It did not go over well in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that would be a foolish tweet. I see where you're coming from. What has he had to do above and beyond? He's got to play his corner, and that's what he did. He played his corner, and he played his corner better than Bradbury played his corner. I give you that. And I'm not sure Kayla was saying she's more worried about Slay. No, I'm more worried about Bradbury. If you're talking about the two highly paid, proven cornerbacks on the Eagles, Slay's been fine. Bradbury has not been as good as he was last year. You're seeing a drop-off there. I'm not seeing a drop-off on Slay, but I don't know that he's gone above and beyond. No,
I go back to that. I go back to that Los Angeles game. It was him who went to Sean Desai and said, "Look, we got to calm this down. We gotta simplify this." When Cooper Kupp was putting, that game was Mario Goodrich and Eli Ricks, and basically a blender in the first half. He was the one who went to the defensive coordinator. And you say maybe that's hyperbole, but then I asked the defensive coordinator, and he admitted it. Yeah, Slay did it. And then at the end of the Cowboys game, he again went up and said, "Look, I'm taking CD Lamb at the end of the game because CD Lamb's putting these guys in the blender again." I mean, I think he's a bigger part of this than people realize, not to mention his leadership and all that kind of stuff with the younger players. But I think he's taken the bull by the horns in big situations. And that's why I picked him to be the midseason defensive MVP. Not the best player. The best player I picked on defense, I picked Josh Sweat.
It's Josh Sweat, yes.
Yeah. I
He's
picked Josh Sweat.
Player, and for me, the MVP. And
well, I would argue Jalen Carter's been the best player, but he doesn't play enough.
Doesn't play enough.
So that's why I picked Josh Sweat, because I put similar to what we talk about when we talk about MVP. Last year, the MVP was Patrick Mahomes. The offensive player of the year was Justin Jefferson. That's why I said that's how they kind of do it on the offensive side of the ball. The MVP is the quarterback award. And then, maybe A.J. Brown, maybe Tyreek Hill could win that offensive player of the year award. That's a potential, but they're not going to win MVP. So I went at it similarly on defense. The MVP, who's the most valuable? I think it's Slay. Who's the best player? I think it's Sweat. That's how I went about it.
Yeah, I don't see that at all. Why would a D-back be more valuable than a
just explained it
speed guy?
Just explained it. I mean, he's
but you compared it to the offensive player and the MVP. I get it because that's a defensive designation. That the quarterback is more important than the wide receiver is. Do you think that cornerbacks are more important?
No, but I think the way he has handled his business has been more important. It's not as drastic because quarterback is built in as a more important position. I'm not focused in built in more important position. You don't have that on defense, but because of what he's done, as I explained, the Rams game, the Cowboys game, because of what he does behind the scenes, I think he's the most valuable player, defensive player to the Eagles. Obviously, it's not as drastic. Quarterback, Tommy DeVito was the most important player on the field for the Giants. That's a problem. That's just the nature of it. I was just using that as an example to split up the awards. Like, we can talk about A.J. Brown. He should be MVP. We can talk about Tyreek Hill. He should be MVP. They're not going to be MVP. That's what I said. They're just not going to be MVP. Defense, it's a little bit different. They don't even have that award, so I kind of made it on my own. They have Defensive Player of the Year, who last year was Nick Bosa. It's generally a pass rusher. It has been in recent years. It probably will be again. But for this particular team, I think the most valuable defender has been Slay. And I'm surprised at how much heat he's taken. But maybe I shouldn't be surprised.
No, I don't think he should be taking heat, but I wouldn't put him on the pedestal that you're putting him on. It's not like he's been shut down. Remember, Bradbury made All Pro last year, so he had a long way to drop. Slay didn't. So I don't know that he's been on that level, and because he got in the defensive coordinator's ear a couple of times. Well, good for him. That means he's staying on top of things, that he's very invested in the game. But I don't know that swung the balance of the power in that game. I'll tell you, the guy who did is the guy who I keep questioning is Roby, because they slow started him that game against the Rams because they didn't want to tax him and throw him out there for all 65 snaps, whatever they're going to have on defense. When they put him into the game and got some of the guys who really aren't slot corners out of the slot corner, that helped to shut down the Rams passing game more than Slay. I don't know.
He was a part of it, though. He was a part of that decision. He's saying, come on.
So you're
Sean,
giving him the MVP because of his assistant coaching status as much as his play.
His coaching on the field status, I would describe it as. And when the defensive coordinator admits it, and that holds some water with me, because usually you don't want to admit that kind of stuff. In fact, I asked, if you remember, the post-game press conference the Monday after, I asked Nick Sirianni, because the same thing happened, and Slay took it upon himself to shadow CeeDee Lamb on that last drive. And I asked him about it, and Sirianni, being the coach he is, downplayed it, but no, it happened. And that's exactly how it happened. And you know, we've given Sean Desai a lot of credit for making adjustments, and I think deservedly so. And I think he's more open-minded than the former defensive coordinator. So I do give him credit for that kind of stuff. But I think Slay is a bigger part of it than people realize.
No, you're giving more credit for the above and beyond actually making plays on the field, talking to coaches, trying to be a coach on the field. If you're going to put a premium on that, I see where you're going. I'll give him some credit, but not as much as you. And I'll tell you what, I specifically watched that game last night, and man, the Buffalo Bills can give away football games like nobody.
He's reckless. I've been saying it for a long time.
Yeah, you have. And And I can't disagree. I'm a big Josh Allen fan on just
Tremendous
his skill
talent.
sets, but man, he does. He's reckless. He takes too many chances. Oh, by the way, it wasn't just him. Others were coughing up. The Bills in general just decided, yeah, do we really need to keep the football here? A really sloppy game by them. They had no right grabbing a lead late in the game, and they did. And then, of course, the Broncos were able to drive it down and kick the game-winning field goal after 2 penalties. And oh, by the way, I was on Twitter last night. I got a couple of Bills fans, Bills Mafia guys who follow me on Twitter, so they hit me a terrible pass interference call. What are you talking about? He specifically underthrew it so the receiver could come back, and the Bills defensive back tackled him on the play. What do you mean terrible pass interference call?
Well,
he had to make that.
You know how that goes. You just said they're Bills fans.
Yeah,
I mean,
Bills
anything, any call that goes against a Bills fan is a bad call. That's every city. We see it all the time here. Yeah, I don't like those underthrown balls either, because people do it purposefully and it's too easy. But that's the game.
Right.
Again,
you gotta make plays within the rules, and the rules are what they are.
Yeah.
And that was a smart play by both Russell Wilson, who, again, I don't know how much he purposefully underthrew it. They were coming zero blitz. They'd come zero blitz the play before and got them and sacked them and forced them to use their last time out and took them out of field goal
Yeah, I'm
range.
not saying he did either, but I'm saying in general, a lot of people do purposefully underthrow so their receiver can come back, and I don't like that. But again, we're complaining. How many times we're complaining about legislation? We're not complaining. That's the rule. Eagles fans can't stand, right, when people complain about the tush push, the brotherly shove, and rightfully so. They're successful at it. Everybody else can't do it. And everybody else wants to change. And you got cowboy announcers complaining they got to ban the play because the Eagles are so successful at it. Blah, blah, blah. And Eagles fans are like, you can't do that. You hate that. You hate that. But when it goes against your team, like a stupid rule like pass interference, everybody hates that. It's all legislation. It's not the officials. They're human beings. They make mistakes. I'm not saying they make mistakes all the time. That's baked into it. Control what you can control. But most of the problem is the rules. And the rules suck, and we can all acknowledge them. But as Nick Sirianni says, as the head coach, tell me the rules and we'll figure out something under those rules. That's the coach's job.
Yep.
That's the rules. Figure it out.
And even though the Bills had a chance to win that game after really not earning it and then coughing it up late, I give you one guy who played well, Johnny Mack. And I harped on this 2 weeks ago, and I stand by it. Howie Roseman missed out. I love Howie. He's the best general manager in the National Football League. He doesn't bat 1,000. Rasul Douglas would have been a good acquisition for this team. He got dealt. The Packers weren't really planning on trading him. They decided to pull the trigger on it when Buffalo gave him the offer that they were looking for. And it wasn't an outrageous amount. It was Rasul plus a 5 for a 3. So it wasn't like giving up a 3rd-round pick. It was giving up the difference between a 3rd-round pick and a 5th-round pick. You talk about secondary flexibility that the Eagles like that. They've forced their guys because of injury to have to do that. Guys like Rick's going in, playing the slot when he's never really played the slot. Taking Brown from the safety position, throwing him in the slot when he's not really a slot corner. A guy like Rasul Douglas, who's proven in the league as both an inside and an outside corner, was available, and the Eagles didn't want to pay the price to get him. They might end up ruining that day, John.
I mean, I like Rasul. I wish Rasul could have withstood the transition from the old defensive scheme to the new defensive scheme, because I think he's a pure outside zone corner. I think he's got great ball skills. He showed it here in limited work, obviously. But yeah, I don't think he can help in the slot long term. I just don't
long
think
term. What are we talking long term? We're talking about 8 regular season games and a Super Bowl run. It's not long. When you say long term, what do you mean?
No, and I hear what you're saying because they're they're a Super Bowl team. So it's a little bit different than saying, you're always trying to serve two masters. You're trying to develop players but when you're in the position the Eagles are, and they generally do, that's when you take more chances and you maybe get somebody, you rent a player, whatever you want to call it, baseball, basketball mentality. I wouldn't complain. I think they'd be better. That third round pick, even though you're getting
not a third round pick, the difference between a third and a fifth.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I get what you're saying. I know, but I don't give a shit about the fifth round pick. I care about the third round pick. The third round pick, premium picks are more valuable, way more valuable than day 3 picks. And premium picks, first, second, third round, day 2, through day 2. Third round pick is much more valuable than a fifth round pick. Not to the point of you're going up however many spots. The odds go incrementally down that you're going to hit a player. And the Eagles have not, if you look at Davion Taylor was a third round pick. It's not, that didn't work out. Nakobe Dean was a third round pick. That's not working out to this point. But then go to the fifth round picks. You can always pick the hits and the misses, but the percentage, I say it all the time. I don't care about day 3 picks. That's where I get more upset about general managers when they covet day 3 picks like they're gold bars. That's when I get upset at GM. Yeah, I'll give you that. I don't give a hoot. But first, second, third, I'm those are gold bars. Those are valuable. So if they could have got him for a 4th round pick, I'm like, yeah. And by the way, they traded so many of their day 3 picks. So we're talking about Howie. Now he's going to get a bunch back compensatory wise, but you can see his thought process. Yeah, I'll give you that. But he's going to hesitate when it's a day 2 pick. And, Rasul in 2022, because, or was it 2021? I forget, but I can look it up. He played in the slot in Green Bay, did a nice job when they had a lot of problems, a lot of injuries, and they needed somebody. And he held up better than the Eagles' parade of whatever you want to call it in the first half of the season. But 2023, I'm just, he's played 15 snaps in the slot, Jody. They have him back outside because he's an outside corner. They always wanted him back outside.
All right, but would you rather have a guy who's never played in the slot before, the 2 guys the Eagles have been playing in there the last several weeks, or a guy who, yes, this season, because of Green Bay's needs, they played him more outside than they did in the slot. But as you said, he had a very good year, ranked very high as a slot corner for the Packers. Which would you rather have, a guy who hasn't played there at all in his career, or a guy who hadn't played there much this year?
Well, if I needed an outside corner, and the Eagles, remember the Eagles and 49ers, and it came out. I think Adam Schefter reported it yesterday. So I wrote about it during the trade deadline. And this can tell you when I was asking Kayla about who the Eagles' biggest threat is. Well, yeah, I can tell you inside the NovaCare complex, they believe it's the 49ers. And they were both kind of, whether you want to call it arms race, rattling sabers, talking about getting corners, and they're both talking to Denver about Patrick Surtain. The Eagles have loved Pat Surtain since the draft. He was one of the players they wanted to get in the draft. Denver's talking about 2 first.
By the way,
picks.
How much has Surtain played in the slot?
Not much. I'd have to look. Not much at all, because he's an outside corner.
I would highly doubt that. So
yeah. But they were trying to keep him away from San Francisco. No, they didn't want Patrick Surtain to play the slot. That's not what I'm trying to say here. They were trying to keep San Francisco away from getting Patrick Surtain, and Jalen Johnson as well, to a lesser degree. So both of those teams were going back and forth and trying, and obviously the Bears and and the Broncos were trying to take advantage of it. Nothing happened. But you can see the arms race feel. They're both trying to make sure the other doesn't get a really good player. If they needed an outside corner, I'd say, yeah, go get Rasul Douglas. He's a great fit for this defense. I'd say, yeah, give him and even if you needed an outside corner, then I'll start talking about a 3rd round pick. But they don't need an outside corner. Even though people are disappointed in Bradbury, they don't need an outside corner right now. They do need a slot corner. I'm not giving up a 3rd round pick for Rasul Douglas to play in the slot. Yeah, can you make the argument? It's a good one. I'm not saying you can't make the argument that this is a Super Bowl team and things should be different and you should be willing to go for it. That I would listen more than they should do it from a football perspective. If you're that close to the Super Bowl and you feel you're that player away, then yeah, go do it. But
and you never you don't want to have this mentality, but you really should have this mentality when you're in the position that the Eagles are. Your one Darius Slay, Eagles defensive MVP, turned ankle from having to play Josh Jobe outside. He's your backup number.
Yeah.
If you got a guy like Rasul Douglas, you go get Rasul Douglas. When Slay turns his ankle, guess what? Rasul, get outside. You can just move him outside. It serves two masters. You get your slot corner in the trade, and then you got a much better backup outside. Now you're going to have to kind of make it up in the slot as you go along if you're moving Rasul out. But I think that's what good general managers do. They have emergency protection.
Well, that I'll listen to. But as far as the fit, like you said, well, he's playing the slot. Well, yeah. Well, if you go, like I said, he's played 15 snaps in the slot this year. If you go through Bradbury's career, I just pulled up Bradbury. So as a rookie, he played 13 in the slot. His second year, he played 10. Then he was up to 57. Then it was 19, then 60, then 68. So, I mean, it's baked into the way the NFL, because there's so many teams use empty sets, nobody more than Philadelphia. So everybody's playing in the slot a little bit. When you're down at those numbers, 15, 20, you're not a slot cornerback. You're not playing in the slot at all. You're just reacting to the defense. Jim Schwartz would always say defense is a reactionary position by nature. Sometimes Slay has to walk inside. Sometimes Bradbury has to walk inside. So that's why people, get too caught up in formations, numbers. Like if you say 11 personnel or 12 personnel or 13 personnel, well, the Eagles could be an 11 personnel and you say, well, that's 3 receivers and they have a running back, but they might be in an empty set. So they're all playing like receivers. It doesn't matter that they're in 11. They could be in 12 and do the same thing. So people get too bogged down in that kind of stuff. But if the Eagles needed an outside corner, I would have said, yeah, I like Rasul Douglas. They need a slot corner. I wouldn't give up a premium pick for that.
Right. And we just look at it differently. If you're getting a fifth back, then it's not a premium pick to me. Most people in the NFL, John, I'm sure you've talked to somebody. If you have a deal like that, what does the pick that you've come out given up turn out to be? If you get back a fifth while giving up a third, most people look at a fourth. That's what they would have given up a fourth. And a fourth isn't a premium pick because for you, that demarcation of day 2 to day 3 is huge. Well, a 4th round pick is the day 3 pick. So I think it was a cost that the Eagles should have considered in a go for it year when you're all in to win a Super Bowl. I think it would have been.
Well, I can't speak for every GM, but I can speak for Howie on that. Howie's not going to look at a 3rd and a 5th turning into a 4. He's not. He doesn't think. He's not one who thinks that way. He is not. I've talked to him enough to know where.
Then since you seem to know how he does grasp it, how does he look at it? What would you just leave it as? It's a 3rd round pick when you're getting a 5th back. How do you
No, he plays
the
he
return pick in
plays
addition to.
he plays the game on day 3 all the time, where you're giving up draft cap, you're giving up draft positioning, you're giving somebody a 7, you get a 6 back, you're moving up the draft, you're moving down the draft. What I'm trying to say is, and what I'm trying, and where I agree with Howie, he values the premium picks more than he values the day 3 picks. Now, also how he changes when he needs, he's been through the cycle. Football's cyclical, and the Eagles are at the high end of the cycle, perhaps the highest ever for this organization. So he's also been through rebuilding process. Now, when he's in a rebuilding process, he puts much more value on day 3 picks than he does right now, because he needs bodies and he looks at them as lottery tickets. Knows the percentages you're probably not going to hit. But if you need bodies and you're able to develop, and it can even go down to the undrafted players at that point, whether it's Reed Blankenship or Eli Ricks this year, those he considers more lottery tickets, for lack of a better term. And if you're rebuilding, and you see this around the league, that's why the Ryan Poleses of the world try to accumulate as many picks to get bodies, because they got to populate a whole roster. So it is a thing that's constantly in flux. And I think that's your best argument for Rasul Douglas, is the Les Snead approach. If you're that close, go for it. I think that's a good argument, and I think that's the best argument. Just go for it, knowing, all right, it's probably a rent a player, blah blah blah. But if that puts you over the top, who gives a crap if you have another Lombardi trophy? I give more credence to that argument. But yeah, in this stage of the game, he values those top picks more than day 3 picks,
And I'll give you
I think he should.
A prime example of a team that did that this very week, and that's San Francisco. They gave up, what was it they gave up to get Young?
Third.
Third.
No, that's a different player. That's
right.
That's a high-end player.
A high-end player. But they gave up a third. If he walks as a free agent into the end of the year and he puts up good numbers and he gets paid big bucks, guess what? They're going to get a compensatory third the year after. So you get the player's services for the entire Super Bowl potential run this year, and you just trade off 1 year waiting for a 3rd round pick. It's the same exact thing.
Well, I'm not
for nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that to me, and I like Rasul Douglas, but that's a different talent level. That's a different...
I was the point I was trying to make about the mindset of going for it. We're all in, push all the chips into the middle of the table for the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to compare Young to Rasul on the level of football players. I get it. Younger, better, has a more impactful position.
And nobody plays the compensatory pick game better than Howie. But I think that was a no-brainer from San Francisco's perspective. And remember, the Eagles. Remember, their picks aren't as valuable as other teams, because everybody knows they're going to be down at the bottom of each prospective round. So even if you're talking about Patrick Surtain and giving up 2 first-round picks, what are the odds that you're going to get a first-round talent like Patrick Surtain and go and draft in 29th to 32nd? Pretty stinking slim. Of course, you're giving up 2 years, but you're probably even going to be good the next year. So, say 25 to 32. I would seriously consider that, to be honest. That's how much I think of him as a player. And it would have been interesting if San Francisco or the Eagles could have pulled that off. But when it comes to Chase Young, when I saw that trade, I was like, oof, Washington, you got to get more than that for Chase Young. I realize all the issues, but you've already seen the talent. Now he's back with his old college teammate. Now he's comfortable. That could be a problem for the Eagles moving forward. There was a lot of bad news coming out of Washington when they traded him, trying to throw him under the bus, and he's freelancing, he's not doing what he's told, and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was a little bit classless from Washington, but whatever. I when I saw that trade, I was like, wow, that's a good trade for John Lynch.
Right. And again, the only point I was trying to make was when you're as close as the Eagles are, the 49ers are, there's only a handful of teams that fall into this category where you're going to suspend your usual valuation chart because to get a key piece while you're making a Super Bowl run, there's only a couple of teams that could do that. And the 49ers were one of them. And I think in that deal, they acted like it. Howie chose not to. He kept to his valuation of players and draft picks and the like. And I just thought a move for a guy like Russell Douglas could be something that he could have done. All right, quickie timeout coming back. Matt Verderame from Sports Illustrated national writer is going to join us coming up in hour number 2 here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grossinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grossinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Got Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody who streamed in. We got over 400 you knuckleheads right now. Thank you very much for doing so. If you're going to stick around and watch, the least you can do is hit the like button. Come on, give us a little bit of a boost here to our algorithm. Thank you for jumping in with us here today. All right, Johnny Mac, before Matt Verderame joins us in about 10 minutes from now. A bunch of guys. Did you do an Eagles report card at the midway point of the season?
No, I did a self-scout.
Self-scout,
did not do a
which
report
is a little
card.
different than a report card. Good for you. A lot of your cohorts, Eagle beat guys and the like, did report cards for the halftime, whatever. I saw a couple report cards on the Eagles rookies, which I got to tell you, I read everybody's grades, and I think there were some guys out there looking at it through Eagle green colored glasses.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of those.
There's only 8 right now, 9 games you can grade a guy on, and you must keep that in mind. This is rookies. These are guys who have never played the National Football League before. And what's Jim Schwartz's favorite line?
Startup costs, baby.
Startup costs. We're factoring in the startup cost. I get that. You got to judge him on a graded startup cost. But when you compare him to every other rookie, you compare the Eagles rookies to the Team X, Team Y, Team Z's rookies. It's not like we're comparing them to the other 1,000 players in the NFL. You're keeping them in their class and just looking what they've done in their class. So that's the way I would grade a rookie class. To compare them to their veteran teammates heavily, I think would be unfair to the rookies. But even look at it in that way, we all agree that the big guy in the middle is an A, if not an A+. He's probably going to be the defensive rookie of the year in the National Football League. How do you do better than that? I don't think you can. So that's got to be an A+. How do you grade out the rest of the Eagles rookies after that? That's a nice way to start things.
Well, I would be. I don't even think you can grade players like. I mean, you're grading on one game with Tyler Steen. You know, Clay Ringo doesn't play.
Yeah,
at
but
all.
John, let me ask you.
Tanner McKee doesn't play at all. Moro Jomo doesn't play at all. Like, and I think to hear your way of doing it, Jody, I would argue. You know, it's easier to play on the Carolina Panthers, the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants than it is to play on the Philadelphia Eagles. So there's certain guys like, you know, they might be playing somewhere else and they might look better because they have some playing time. So they might have some stats and blah, blah, blah. So I would say that it's hard. The Eagles are good, but I would say Nolan Smith is disappointing. I would say Tyler Steen is disappointing. I wouldn't say Sidney Brown is disappointing because I think he's done a lot for the team, and played out of position, all that kind of stuff. I would say Kelee Ringo's disappointing as a cornerback, but I had him as a special teams MVP. I know nobody cares about special teams, but I think he's been valuable. Tanner McKee doesn't play, but I think he did a good job in camp. Moro Jomo doesn't play, but I think he did a good job in camp. So those are your picks. And the reason I'm disappointed in Steen is because, you know, there was a lot of talk that there would be a legitimate competition at right guard for a lot of reasons. One, Cam Jurgens is a natural center. One, Nick Sirianni wouldn't give Cam Jurgens the job. Remember all that? We would ask Nick Sirianni 100 times, is Cam Jurgens the starter? Is Cam Jurgens? And he would keep pushing it off and keep pushing it off and keep pushing it off because long-term, the Eagles want Tyler Steen to be their right guard. But he wasn't ready to make the transition, wasn't ready to make the move from tackle at the college level to guard at the pro level, needed more time, which is fine. It's understandable, but I think they were expecting more right off the bat. And Nolan Smith would be the biggest disappointment because there's an opportunity there to gain some playing time. Not a lot, but a little bit. And he hasn't done it. And when he is out there, he's not effective. So I would say he's been the most disappointing, but I'm not going to give him an F or anything. Right. I mean, I'd give him a C, maybe a C minus. Tyler, maybe a C minus. I'm seeing a lot of
B's and B pluses. If you go A plus for the top guy, which you should, I saw a lot of B's for the rest of the Eagles draft. Now I'm going,
well, they're nice. It's
I do after Carter is incomplete.
Yeah, I would go most incomplete. Obviously, McKee and Jomo are incompletes as, you know, late round draft picks. You know, Ringo's the most interesting because I think he's a failure as a cornerback. they throw everybody out there before they throw Kelee Ringo out there. But he's been really good. I talked about it on the show. He's been like a difference maker on special teams. Nobody cares about that. Well, I can't make people care about that. I do think there is some value to that. So I can't give him an F, but from a cornerback perspective, the Eagles would play Jody McDonald at cornerback before they play Kelee Ringo, evidently. So he hasn't been up to speed as a potential cornerback. So he's the toughest because he's been meaningful on one area. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's panic level on anybody at this stage. But I'm a little disappointed in Nolan Smith. I would say that.
Right. And here's how I would categorize how I would rank these guys. None of the Eagle players in the draft, none, even the guys who are incomplete because they haven't really gotten on the field. Tanner hadn't gotten on the field. Moro Jomo's played what? Single-digit snaps. He was activated for one game, got in for a half. No one gets an F and or the label a bust. Not even Kelee Ringo, because as you point out correctly, he's doing something. He's playing very well on special teams. I don't think that they plan to be playing Ricks above him and Mario Goodrich above him and Gardner above him, undrafted players when he's a 4th-round draft pick, to get them actually on the field from line of scrimmage. So that outweighs the special teams contribution he makes, but it doesn't make it disappear. So I'm with you. Can't be a bust, can't be an F. They're all in the C's to me. They're C minus.
Yeah, a bunch of C's.
I'd put Brown at the best at C plus because he's been asked to play out of position. Nobody's even getting a B minus this side of Jalen Carter, who's an A plus, and again doesn't dictate the rest of their careers. Startup costs with rookies, you can only expect so much, and I believe I'm looking at this on a curve, and I'm keeping everybody open for evaluation going forward, but it hasn't been a Buffo year for Eagle rookies. Sorry about that, just the way that I would grade them out.
Yeah, it's one of the rare instances where exactly on the same page. I'm with you. A bunch of C's. I can't give anybody a B outside of Jalen Carter. Who gets an A, maybe an A plus. Yeah, I'm with you. I the most impactful rookie besides Jalen Carter on the Philadelphia Eagles is Kelee Ringo for a different reason than expected.
Right. And one that, again, because they changed the rules in the National Football League, I would say the Eagles are better on special
I would
teams
say Sydney. I'll take it back. Sydney's above Kelee Ringo because he's played significant snaps.
He's actually
and he started one game at safety, and he's done some decent work in the slot. So I would say Sydney, and then Ringo, which is not great.
And here's the reason why I can't get too jazzed about Kelee Ringo's and his rankings and special teams. The Eagles don't use special teams all that much. They go for it on 4th down all the time. The kickoffs now are maybe one a game is actually returned, John. And the Eagles kick off a lot because they score a lot. They probably kick off as much as anybody else in the National Football League, but who cares? Elliott kicks into the back of the end zone every single time. So the actual number of plays someone must be good in special teams is not all that great for the Eagles. So even when Ringo does it and he's good at it, how many times is he really having an effect on the game? It's not as big a deal in the league, and it's not as big a deal.
No, it isn't, but I think it becomes a bigger deal as the season wears on, and all of a sudden you'll start to see more kicks returned as the weather turns in the Midwest, Northeast. And you've already started to see it a little bit. I go back to last year when everybody thinks the Eagles were great, and they were great, but now it's become a mythical greatness. Like there was no struggles last year. There were plenty of struggles last year, but the one thing they were bad at was special teams. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a stat guy, Rick Gosselin, special teams rankings, a film guy, PFF, analytics guy, Football Outsiders. Everybody agreed. Bottom five. They were terrible at it. And now they're top 10. And it's because of two guys, Ringo and Josh Jobe, who both can't play corner. But it is what it is.
They can play gunner on the outside. All right. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. That makes us Mac Birds 365. I see Matt Verdram in the green room. He's ready to jump in with us to talk all things NFL, specifically Eagles Chiefs this week. He covered the Chiefs for years. Matty V up next here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grosinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grosinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac on Birds 365, and we're lucky enough to get Matt Verdram, national football writer for Sports Illustrated, here to jump in with us. Good to see you, Matty V. Thanks for hopping in. Here's where I'm going first with you. Kind of a position where they're at kind of question. Who's feeling worse about themselves this morning? The Jacksonville Jaguars or the Buffalo Bills?
Oh, it's got to be Buffalo. I mean, it has to be. I know that Jacksonville got beat by 31 points, but they're 6-3. They're fine.
Right. I'm just talking about the effect of their loss this weekend. Which is more painful? Which is more draining? Which has more of a continuing effect? The 31-point beatdown, or you had the game in your hand and you just said, "Here, please take it from me."
The Bills, because if you're Jacksonville, as much as that loss stinks, I mean, I think that's one of those games you just kind of walk away from it going, hey, look, we got our tails kicked, period. And we got to fix it, and we can correct a million things. The Bills was like this every week with undisciplined plays, with poor coaching. I mean, that game last night, how the hell did you have 12 guys on the field on that field goal attempt when you knew that whole defensive drive, hey, we might need to have the field goal block team come out here. And then the Broncos, first down, they kneel the ball. You call timeout. Second down, they kneel the ball. You call timeout. No one's going over this on the sideline like, hey, guys, we know the 11, right? Like, we know who's – it wasn't one of these things where, hey, Denver completes a miracle ball down the field and everybody's in a fire drill mode. You knew for 5 minutes you had to go out there. And you 12 guys on the field. That game, they're now 5-5. That game is of catastrophic proportions to Buffalo. I do not think they will make the playoffs. Their schedule's way too hard. They're losing to both the teams that play next Monday night. And that should do it. That'll take care of Buffalo for the year.
Yeah, here in Philadelphia, we talked about that murderer's row since the schedule came out, but everything changes. Buffalo is part of that murder. Well, they don't look that difficult right now, to be honest. The reckless play. At what point, Matt, did people start looking at Sean McDermott in this situation? The window closed. We know the playoff loss. I mean, the management of the end of that game was historically bad. And you're just talking about, how do you have 12 people on the field? It's a little bit of a theme. I don't want to call it a theme, but end of game situations. Yeah. One of the strengths here in Philadelphia with Nick Sirianni, I love Jody knows. I love CEO coaches because I think the game is so big when it comes to game management. If you're doing something else, and remember, Sean ran Leslie Frazier out of there. If you're doing something else, you get bogged down. You're thinking about it. Mistakes happen. 12 men on the field. Bad end of game situation management. Is Sean McDermott on the hot seat?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has to be, which is weird because he's just got an extension. But those coaching contracts and a lot of times have out clauses in them and different things. So it's always kind of hard to tell exactly.
Jimbo Fisher, they're paying $75 million.
Jimbo Fisher. If I was Jimbo Fisher, I would have tried to get fired. And give me $76 million in the beach. Look, he's got to be on the hot seat. Quite honestly, right now, everybody in Buffalo, I think to some degree, other than Allen, of course, is on the hot seat. I mean, you're in a position where you're 5-5. You're probably not making the playoffs. I mean, realistically, they have 5. Not only do they have 5 losses, they're all in the conference.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at, they maybe can lose one more game. They still got to go to Philly, go to Kansas City, go to Miami, go to the Chargers, play the Cowboys at home. I mean, they're losing one more game. They can't beat New England. They can't beat Denver. So, yeah, I think he's on the hot seat. Brandon Beane, I don't think is, but I got to tell you, if you really look at Brandon Beane's record the last 4 years, who have they drafted? I like Kincaid. That's about the extent of the list. I mean, they have not drafted well. They have a lot of old, expensive players on that team. They have a cap crunch next year. This is going to be painful the next couple of years here for Buffalo. I mean, you're never going to rebuild with Allen in the middle of his prime, but you're going to have to do a pretty serious retooling on the fly. It is.
Can I just say something though, Matt, about Josh Allen? He's incredible. Nobody questions the talent. I mean, off the charts. But he's reckless. Yeah. At what point is it fair to say he's too reckless? He's too reckless.
I mean, personally, I've hit that point about a month ago. I mean, I've written that multiple times on SI, but the fact that, look, at some point, if you're an elite quarterback, you can't make the mistakes he makes every game. You just can't do it. I mean, you take last night, for example. The first interception is not his fault. Gabe Davis, despite the fact that NFL receivers at this point wear flypaper on their hands, can't catch, ball goes right through his hands, gets intercepted. Okay, fine. That second pick right before the end of the half, you just cannot throw that football. You can throw it 10 yards over his head. You can throw it into the stands. You can take a sack, whatever. You're deep in your own territory with 30 seconds left. You cannot throw an interception. And that ball is completely on Allen. I mean, that's a coverage where Denver's sagging with the underneath guy. You know those over the top guys are going to drive on these out routes, these deeper routes. You just cannot throw that ball. And it cost them 3 points in the game that they lost by 2. And we see him do it over and over. They lost the Jets game because of Josh Allen. The first play of the New England game, he threw an interception that led to points. I mean, these things are not one-offs. They happen all the time. To me, he's not on the level right now of Mahomes or Burrow when he's right or Hurts. He's not. I mean, he's not one of those guys. He's more right now to me. I think on my quarterback rankings this week, I have him 8th. Like, he's very good, but he's not great. You can't be great when you have more picks than Mac Jones this year. Sorry. He is leading the league with 11 picks. It's been brutal.
We debated this before the season ever started. Maybe with you here on the show. John and I certainly have. The comparison between the AFC and the NFC. And everyone I knew thought, well, the AFC's better. How much better is the question? They got a better quarterback, the rank. The NFC this week made a statement for me that maybe there isn't a difference at all. All the key teams, if you look at Kansas City and Philadelphia as the 2 best teams, which I think you should.
Yeah.
They didn't play. They play each other this week. But NFC, Lions win, 49ers win, Cowboys win. Shoot, even put the Vikings into that mix, they win. AFC, Bills lose, Ravens lose, Jaguars lose. All teams we thought of as if not playoff lock.
I thought Baltimore was the best team in football coming into the week, so I put the kibosh on them. Yeah.
Is there any difference between the AFC and the NFC, or is this as balanced a league as you've seen in a while?
It's pretty balanced. I think the AFC is probably a little deeper in terms of like the NFC. What I'm driving at is like the NFC in the playoffs. Like Minnesota, it's a nice story. Minnesota is going to get annihilated in the wild card.
You're not a Josh Dobbs guy.
I'm a Josh Dobbs guy in terms it's a great story. Yeah. I'm not a Josh Dobbs guy in San Francisco in January. No, I am not. And the NFC South is a tire fire. Like that's another one of these. Like Dallas will probably get the 4 seed and just blow the doors off New Orleans. So in that sense, I think the AFC is better because I don't know that there's anybody in the AFC that you look at who's going to make the playoffs and just go, that team is just no chance in hell of winning a playoff game. But the top of the conference, yeah, I mean, look, you could argue Philly and San Francisco. The Chiefs are of that quality. Is there anybody else of that quality in the AFC? I mean, maybe when the Bengals are right, maybe if Baltimore is right. I'm not a big Baltimore guy. I just always feel like I've seen this movie before with Baltimore. But you can certainly make the argument. I don't know that Jacksonville or Miami is a team that I look at and think can go to the Super Bowl. I think they can win a playoff game. I think on their best day, they can be a thorn in anybody's side. But can they win the Super Bowl? Can they get to the Super Bowl? I doubt it. Buffalo, we just talked about, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Houston is a real fun up-and-coming team. Houston reminds me of Jacksonville last year, where you looked at them and said, really up-and-coming team, good team, but are they going to go to Arrowhead second week of January and win that game? Like, probably not. So, yeah, I think right now in the NFL, I'm still on the Bengals. I still think that the Bengals are a threat. To me, the last 4 teams standing last season are the best 4 teams this year.
Yeah, probably as we stand here. But to Matt's point, I mean, right now, today, as we speak, if the playoffs started, Cincinnati's not in the playoff. Buffalo's not in the playoff. The Chargers, Jody's Jets, and obviously that has to do with the quarterback. That was going to be a really good team if Aaron Rodgers doesn't get hurt. When you look at the NFC, Minnesota's the 7th seed right now. Then you have Tampa, Washington, Atlanta, Green Bay. So I do think the AFC is deeper, no question about it. And then you have, maybe Pittsburgh is in the playoffs right now. They're not as good as they look.
No, they would get
and as you mentioned, Houston, CJ Stroud's a great story, but great step forward. But I don't think they're a great team. But I think it's fair to say the AFC is deeper. Now, let's talk about your wheelhouse, those Kansas City Chiefs, because I'm a little bit concerned offensively. What's going on? And you think about a team with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and you're usually not worried about offense if you got those 2 parts of the equation. But if you go all the way back to their Denver game, that was bad. The inaugural Frankfurt game, they aren't explosive at all, and then they're going on the bye week. What's going on with that offense? Is it just as simple as the receivers aren't good enough? Besides outside receivers.
No, you know what? So this is kind of the funny thing about the Chiefs. I think that nationally has been completely missed. And if you actually watch them, and I've watched every snap of them probably twice over this year, their receivers are not great, but you have Travis Kelce, who's still playing like Travis Kelce, and you have Rashee Rice, who's actually a really good young receiver. He's a rookie this year. He's been excellent for them. Their receiving core is not anything to write home about. Don't get me wrong. Like, that certainly is part of the issue. I mean, after those two guys, you start talking about like Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Justin Watson, and guys who are like fine in a complimentary role, but like that's pretty much what they're good for. Their biggest problem is they turn the ball over nonstop. And I'm pretty sure, at least going into this week, now they have the bye, it probably isn't true anymore. Going into this week, they've taken the most penalty yardage of any team in football. And it's almost all offensive. Like, they don't take many penalties on defense. They are this year, you can make a real argument, they're the best defense in football. They have been phenomenal defensively. They can, any way you want to play, they can play you on defense. We can get into that later. But offensively, they are a wreck with penalties and turnovers. They have 17 turnovers this year. They cannot stop fumbling the ball, throwing picks they shouldn't throw. Like, Mahomes has gotten away with some of that nationally. He hasn't been to Josh Allen levels, but by his standards, he has been very careless with the ball this year. My whole thing with them is, look, if they can just stop beating themselves, they're fine, even with these receivers. Because in games where they haven't beaten themselves, they've racked up over 400 yards on offense, no problem. They've scored plenty of points. They have a very good 1-2 punch at running back led by Pacheco. They have all these guys, and the line is very good. The line is an excellent offensive line. They've protected Mahomes. He's gotten the least amount of sacks this year against him. But the turnovers, they only have one game this year where they've not turned the ball over, and that was against Minnesota. It's the only game. They lost that game to Denver that you mentioned, John, because they had 5 turnovers in that game. And yet, with 5 turnovers, they were down 14-9 with 7 minutes left, and they were getting the ball, and then they muffed a punt inside their own 5-yard line. That was the game. Yeah. Like, they've played atrociously in terms of beating themselves, and they're 7-2. So it really does come down to, can you just stop beating yourself? I think even with the receivers, if they do that, they'll be fine.
If they're turning it open as often as you say they are, and I'm sure you're right, how much of it is on Mahomes? Is he taking chances? He putting the ball up for grabs? You're saying the line's giving him time.
Yep.
I sure it can't be all fumbles by guys other than him either fumbling or him throwing it up for grabs. How much of their minus territory, that's what we call turnovers, is on the quarterback?
A good amount. I mean, you got to put blame on them. Look, they have 17 this year, 17 turnovers. They have 10 interceptions, and 2 of those came from Gabbert when they were up 41-0 on the Bears. But as a team, they've thrown 10 picks. They've also lost 7 fumbles. So, I mean, they have just done everything they possibly can. It's a lot of fumbles. I mean, like I said, at the end of last week, I believe they were leading the league. Now they're to a point where 6 teams have as many or more turnovers in them, Buffalo and the Browns among them. But yeah, the Chiefs, I mean, it's been a big problem. It's been a big problem for them. And Mahomes at times, they've had a few, kind of like the Gabe Davis interception last night, where Mahomes just hit a guy right in his hands, and the ball, Kadarius Toney kind of famously week 1, the ball right through his hands and turned on pick 6. There's been a few like that for Mahomes, but he's had 5 or 6 picks this year. He's just throwing the ball right at somebody because he's trying to force the ball down the field. And a lot of his picks have come 30, 40 yards downfield. Some of them on 3rd down where you're like, okay, look, if you're going to throw a pick, that's probably the place to do it. A little bit of an arm punt.
Right.
But they have not been consistent at being able to avoid these, frankly, a lot of them are pretty avoidable turnovers. I mean, it's not as though, he's been pressured into them. I mean, these have been throws where he's had some time and he's trying to force a play. It'll be interesting with both the Chiefs and the Eagles coming out of the bye week. These teams are smart teams, well coached. They're going to self-scout. How much of these issues that both teams have had can you fix? But I think to the point of them being the 2 best teams in the league, I mean, neither one of these teams is playing to capacity, and one of them's 8-1, the other one's 7-2. I mean, most teams, you played poorly, you're the Bills right now, right? Like, The Chiefs and the Eagles, their fan bases are ripping their hair out of their heads, and they're a combined 15-3. So it goes to show the talent level on those teams.
Exactly.
Well, that's a good point. Style points for both of them haven't been there, but they keep winning games, which is last time I checked what it's all about. Let's talk about that defense. You know, Steve Spagnuolo is one of those guys, man. He has been forever. I don't know. He's revered in Philadelphia. He got here with Andy Reid in '99, and I believe he left in 06, 07, somewhere around there. So it's been a long time, and people keep talking about him. They love him. King of the third down. Is he doing something differently this year? Why have they taken the next step defensively?
He's not. I mean, the only thing maybe they're doing a little differently is last year, I guess, it's pretty noted throughout the year, and especially going to the Super Bowl. They had 1 million rookies on defense last year. I mean, they were playing literally 4 starting secondary players that were rookies last season. I mean, it was incredible. They had Karlaftis up front and Chanel at the second level. And all those guys have ranged now from being a superstar level player in McDuffie to a star player in Karlaftis to the rest of them all being really good. So you now know the system, all those guys, that half dozen, and they added a Menahu up front. They added Drew Tranquil at linebacker, who was going to kind of start for Bolton at times. Then Bolton got hurt, and Tranquil's been as good as Bolton. He's been unbelievable. They have Mike Edwards, who they brought in from the Bucs. There's a third safety, and with Spags, they like to play a lot of 3 safety looks, and so Edwards has been very good for him. Look, they ranked 4th in yardage against, 2nd in points against, 5th in passing yardage against. They've had 2 games this year where they haven't given up 100 passing yards. I mean, they are relentless up front. They're a team that they blitz, but they don't always have to. They get home with 4 constantly. I mean, their pressure rate's top 5. They're top 3 in sacks. They are, I believe, they have the fewest missed tackles in the NFL, fewest yards after catch allowed in the NFL. They are. Their biggest strength is they don't have a weakness. They can play any way you want to play. They can play big. They can play smaller. They can play in base. They can play in dime, and whatever you want to do. And so with that freedom, Spagnuolo, as Eagles fans know from his days there, like they'll spin the wheel with their coverages. They'll play anything. They'll play zone. They play man. They play any variation you want. I mean, they are so exotic defensively. You know, I do an all 22 piece every week at SI, and I'll sit down and watch film of these teams. And a lot of these teams, it's the same coverage almost every play. You know, they'll sit in quarters. They'll sit in coverage. I mean, it's the same.
Including the opposition that's coming to Kansas City this week.
The Eagles are a team that, yes, they will sit in a certain – the Chiefs are one of those teams where you watch them, and every play you have no idea.
Why I like the Spagnuolos. I like the Floreses of the world who mix things up.
It's like Anarumo and
some
Cincy,
different
where
things.
every
Anarumo,
play, you know, they will – and the Chiefs, one thing they do – I genuinely think better than anybody in football this year. They disguise their coverages where they will put a safety at the line of scrimmage, and on the snap the guy bails 30 yards, and then and then Karlaftis drops and they blitz a linebacker in a corner. I mean, it's just you have to be prepared with them for a lot of stuff as an opposing offense. They will throw everything at you.
All right, so let me ask you about the Chiefs offense in a similar way. Doing something unexpected, having the guts to change it on the fly, whatever. Coming into this game, we watch Eagles every single play of every single game. We watch the Chiefs more so than we do. Who's going to be the team that uses hurry up successfully? I don't think of either one of these teams as a hurry up team, that they do it dictated by score and where you are in the game and everything else. But just as a change of pace, catch the other team off guard. I don't think of either one of them that way. Is there a chance one of the two does that this weekend?
I don't think so either. I don't. I mean, here's one thing to consider for this. I don't know how you guys feel. Maybe you'll feel like this is dumb, but I truly believe this might happen in this game. Normally, you get an AFC team and an NFC team, you're not holding anything back, right? Because it's like, well, who cares? We're not going to see that team. What does it matter? They're not a team we'll see in the playoffs. I don't know that either one of these teams is going to show a whole hell of a lot.
Empty the bucket? You're telling me neither one of them is empty in the bucket this week, Verderham?
I think there's a very real chance that both of these teams are looking at each other going, you know what? Might not be the only time we play this year.
Yeah.
And both teams are in the 1 seed. Both teams are in very good position in their divisions. I wonder if this is a game a little bit where both Reed and Sirianni go, listen, we'd love to win. That'd be great. But we're not showing anything of real note in this game. Like, now, obviously, you have the tape from the Super Bowl, but, teams are different. Teams are different every year, different coordinators, stuff like that. I wonder in this game if you get a little bit of, you know what? Not going to show our best third down play here. Not going to show our best play in the red zone. Because right now, if you had to pick who's going to be in the Super Bowl, wouldn't it be these two teams? Wouldn't it have to be? Right? Like, so how dumb would you feel if you show every single thing in this game and then in 2 months you're like, great, we just put the entire Super Bowl on tape for the other team? I have a feeling, I think it's going to be a very good game. I think it'll be a very entertaining game. I don't think it's going to be a game where both coaches are just laying out an A-plus game plan's worth of stuff. I really don't. I think it's going to be a game where it's going to be, hey, look, we're trying everything we can to win, but we're not showing those 10 plays that we think will really work against you if we need them come February. Maybe I'm nuts, but that's my thought on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that. Typically, I would agree with you, Matt. AFC games, inter-conference games aren't as important as conference games, but this one's a little bit different in the standpoint you might see the opponent again down the road. But, man, the Eagles know how important home field advantage is during the playoffs. The Chiefs at Arrowhead obviously know how important it is. Andy coming off a bye. It's ironic, Andy came into Kansas City when Nick was on the staff with Romeo Crennel that finished 2-14, and obviously Nick was out with the door, understandably so.
Right.
And I think it was the second year Nick called up Andy and said, dude, what's your secret on the bye week? And Andy was nice enough to give him some advice and tell him to go to New York, I think, on vacation or something of that nature. But Nick's a competitive guy, man. He did not like losing that Super Bowl. The Eagles thought they had the better football team. They thought they beat themselves, yada, yada, yada. A lot of teams think that when they lose, but I think it's a little bit more than a normal interconference game, at least for one side. Maybe not the Chiefs, I don't know, but for the Eagles.
No, I think Jen, you're right. I mean, there's definitely, look, these are two great teams. I mean, there's definitely a pride factor, number one. Sirianni was fired from the Chiefs. Reed was fired from the Eagles. I mean, there is definitely a level of like, you want to win this football game. Don't get me wrong. I think both teams, they want to win. Is it probably more personal for Philly? Yeah. I mean, after last year, sure it is. But I guess my point is, if you're the Eagles or the Chiefs in this game, there has to be a little bit in your back of your mind, like, we might see this team again. And so do you just lay it all out there? Maybe you do. Maybe you say, look, we want to make a statement in this game. We want to show, we want to win this game by 2 touchdowns, and we want to prove a point. Maybe you also feel like, look, if we don't play our A-plus game plan, we're going to get blown out by the other side. If they decide. So, look, that is all in play. I'm not saying for sure it's going to happen. My point is just, I do think you consider the idea you might see each other again. I remember last year when the Bengals and Kansas City played in Cincinnati in the regular season. The Chiefs, if you go back and watch that tape, why would you at this point? The Chiefs showed nothing on defense. Spagnuolo played a cover 2 shell the entire game. The entire game. They didn't change. They didn't blitz once. They sat there the whole game. And then they saw him in the AFC Championship game, and I don't think they played cover 2 once the entire night. They blitzed all night long. They played a bunch of different coverages. It'll be interesting. I think this is a fascinating game because both teams off the bye. You're going to have new wrinkles. You're going to have some different personnel groupings. Of course, the Eagles have to adjust now. They don't have Goddard this week, so that matters. I mean, you're going to have to change some things on offense. I would expect the Chiefs, who have been playing all their receivers quite a bit in a rotation, I think that's going to get shortened and pared down starting this week. So you're going to see some adjustments for sure. I think it's a great game. I'm covering it for SI at Arrowhead. I'll be there Monday night.
Nice.
I cannot wait to cover that game.
Last one for me, Matty. And this is unfortunately pointing out a potential Eagle weakness. They think it'll be solved because Bradley Roby will be in the lineup this week. We don't know that yet, but we're assuming that. And they picked him up the scrap heap, and he played a couple of good games for him. He's got all of 50 snaps under his belt, but somehow he's going to cure the ills of the Eagles cornerbacks in the slot, which have not worked good. who's going to be the key guy coming out of the slot for the Chiefs? We know that Kelsey's Kelsey, and he's going to get mostly safety coverage would be my guess. I don't think the slot corner is going to come much. So it's either big safety. Eagles linebackers aren't great in coverage, so it better be Blankenship or the safety that they just acquired, which means somebody's going to have to cover one of those chief wide receivers coming out of the slot. Who's that going to be? Who's their biggest threat as a slot wide receiver?
I'd love to give you a straightforward answer, Jody. They put everybody there.
They just move guys in
it'll
and out.
It'll be McCole Hardman one play. It'll be Rashee Rice the next play. It'll be Travis Kelce the next play. It'll be Noah Gray, who, by the way, is one player that Eagles fans should be somewhat aware of because he is somebody, they don't play him a ton, but when they do, like they'll throw the ball downfield to him. They'll throw the ball 30, 35 yards down the field to the backup tight end. And he's athletic enough he can do it. So he's somebody to kind of watch as like a bit player. But yeah, they'll rotate in everybody. I mean, Kadarius Toney, who's done nothing this year, but Andy just finished talking about it yesterday, how they basically tried to not play him for 8 weeks because he's coming off knee surgery. How much of that is just trying to protect the fact that he hasn't been good this year? I don't know. But that's the one thing. It comes down to up front, period. And that is going to be the game.
Beef on beef.
Always does up front. That's why the Eagles build the way they do. And by the way, where'd they get that from, Matt? Andy Reid.
In a lot of ways, they're very similar teams.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chiefs and the Eagles, you can make a real argument if you're talking about both sets of lines. They're the two best sets of lines in the NFL. I mean, both teams up front have all pros all over the place. Whoever wins that battle is going to win. That really, I think, is probably it. If the Eagles can't get home again and Mahomes has time, probably plays well. They probably score some points. If the Eagles can protect Hurts as they did in the Super Bowl and he's got all day, he's probably going to throw it all over the place, even with the secondary players the Chiefs have, because the Eagles are just that good. Which team wins up front? Whoever does that is walking out of Arrowhead very happy on Monday night.
All right, I lied. Now I got one more thing because you went there. You're a Chicago guy these days, used to be Kansas City guy, traveling back to Kansas City to cover it this week. Have you done your 7-day forecast yet? Do you know what the weather's going to be like on Monday?
Well,
I have no idea.
I looked it up last night. Now, this is, again, 7 days in advance, so who the hell knows?
That's why I didn't look it up. 7 days in advance.
No.
Very, very high chance of rain all day on Monday. From morning through night, not heavy downpours, but chance of showers all 24 hours, which means another slick field between the Chiefs and the Eagles, which was unfortunately part of last year's Super Bowl. I was looking for perfect, pristine playing conditions, may the best line and or speed win. We might not even get that on Monday. Now, I hope Jody Mack playing weatherman is 100% friggin' wrong, but that was what I looked up last night. So bring a slicker with your Virgin Ram when you go to Kansas City. I know you know how to dress for the weather there, but you might be getting some rain.
I'll see you there, Matt, if I can get there. We'll see.
All right. Well, hey, you let me know. I'll meet up. I'll get some barbecue. I am going to load up.
How's the Kansas City output on press box? Johnny Mack likes to rate the nothing better than the Cowboys. He's looking forward. He's got that circled on the calendar. Jerry's got the best.
The food is.
I see that reaction. They have no chance to
but I got to tell you, but I don't care in Kansas City because I go out beforehand and I eat so much that I can't possibly eat.
That's a good
Eat
point.
more at the press box.
That's a good point.
He knows the joints in KC the same way he knows the Chiefs. That's why we have him on. Matty V, always a pleasure, buddy. Thank you very much for jumping in.
Thanks,
man. Safe travels to Kansas City. Matt Verderam from Sports Illustrated here with us on Birds 365. Always a good spot. Quickie timeout, come back, put a bow on the show on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
My name is Dr. Bruce Grosinger, and I'm the medical director of Philadelphia PRP and Stem Cell Institute. I'm reaching out to those who suffer from spine and joint pain. We use treatment methods that require no surgery, no scalpel, no drugs.
Running, walking, or whatever your desires are, Dr. Grosinger is where you need to come.
You can benefit from the same PRP and stem cell treatment as Wilbert Montgomery. Call us now at 610-222-5675.
We're here to show you a better way to spend your state income taxes and get the money to where it's needed to most to the thousands of qualified kids.
What we like about Blocks is they really know where the need is.
This program ensures that their dollars come 100% into these kids for their tuition assistance.
If you are able, Blocks makes the EITC piece go very quickly and very smoothly.
Turn your PA state tax liability into need-based scholarships and receive a 90% tax credit.
Underdog Fantasy has a way for you to play alongside your favorite football team all season long with their fantasy pick'em game. You pick between 2 to 5 players, select whether they'll go higher or lower on one of their stats, then do what you usually do on a Sunday, watch the games. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single game by going 5 for 5. It's a fantasy game, and the Sports Betting Show wants you to get involved. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. When you sign up, use the promo code WIN, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
EAGLES, Eagles.
All right, we ran a little late with Matty V, so Johnny Mac, we got time for one question before we get ready for Billy C and the Power Hour. I won't ask you to give me your source, but do you have a source that you could go to today and ask, since no Eagles practice, nothing, Monday night, everything gets pushed back to a Monday schedule, so nothing today, to give you a potential heads up on Evans as to whether he's going to, if they're even going to open his practice window. We're speculating that Jurgens gets back this week and is back in the lineup, but nobody knows about Evans yet. You said you haven't seen Evans leading up to the bye week, so you got a source to tell you more yay than nay on Evans as to whether he's going to play this weekend or not?
No, because I've been asking that for a couple weeks because I haven't seen him. I've asked that a couple times when, basically, because as you talk about the IR rules, it's, 4 games minimum. Doesn't mean you're only going to be on there for 4 games. It means you have to be on there for 4 games. So there's all kinds of injuries. Like Nakobe Dean, ultimately, when they place him on IR, if it's a Lidsprang sprain, which has been reported 6 to 8 week injury typically, so he's going to miss more than 4 games. Evans, it's been, and that's why it's so weird. Typically you see guys, even when they don't want to talk, you see guys walking in, out of the locker room. I saw Cam Jurgens a lot. I haven't seen Justin. I have not seen him even once. So kind of a mystery. That one is kind of a mystery.
That's why I was asking if you had a good super secret source.
I did. He was on the practice field last week. So
he was.
Working on a side field on rehab. So that was a good indication that He's not too far away.
Okay.
But if I were a betting man, I would say they're going to start his window because it's 3 weeks this week. That would be my guess, and that's only because he was on the practice field, working on the side field with trainers. So that's an indication he's not terribly far off.
We shall see this week, and hopefully Johnny Mac's source gives him something today on some of the Eagle players. Don't know if that's going to happen because they're not together as a group just yet. They haven't completely come out of the bye, but the Chiefs are just around the corner. We'll talk Eagles Chiefs again tomorrow. I'll be here, Johnny Mac. How about you? You in for a Wednesday Eagle Fest?
Yeah, let's do it.
McDonald and McMullen back in 2-2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.